What's up, everybody? We're on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to go over 4 DLC ideas for Mafia: The Old Country. Look, they're adding free updates. We've made videos, talked about that. The potential is there. When I'm talking about DLCs, I'm talking like meaty additions, and whether these end up ever happening or not, that's up to them. I would probably assume it's less likely, but there's always a possibility, and I'm trying to keep it realistic. I'll go over the reasoning for all 4 of these. They're all a little bit different. So this will contain spoilers, and I want to start with actually doing the reverse. So these are 4 ideas that I think, could work. What's one idea that might not work? Let's start there. I actually think really anything with Enzo, and that's kind of crazy. I really like the character. We've talked about that, but I think, they really told his story. And when I'm trying to think of how they could do DLC, I'm trying to think of like little pockets of time that maybe, they skipped over. And look, here's the thing. They did skip. There were jumps in the years, and could you find 5 months somewhere in the timeline where Enzo is just doing general tasks, getting closer to people? Yes, that's very possible. I think that mission was done. I think that they showed the important tasks that he pulled off to get him from one level to the next, or what his relationship was with Cesare, like how that evolved. I think they showed those moments. The moments with Isabella, right? How that relationship evolved. I think they showed those as well. Are there times they could have added? Like, could you add more stuff? Sure, but I'm going to start off by just saying, if we don't see Enzo in, say, one of these fictional DLCs, I wouldn't be all that upset about it. Okay, so let's start with number 1, which is anything Luca related. Now, this one, I want to start this one kind of ambiguous and open. We're going to get more specific as we go throughout this list. But for this character, I just think he's so great. And I'm not even thinking anything in particular. I just kind of want more of him. I've said before, like, what happens to him, I think, kind of needed to happen to him in a sad, twisted way, right? He was too important to Enzo. He got him too much. And I've seen nice speculation online of like, did he know? Did he actually know about Enzo and Isabella? And, when he's in his dying breath telling Enzo to get out, if he has the opportunity, was he really thinking about like him and Isabella? Maybe not. But did he have like an inkling that something was happening? Because he seemed like a very smart man, a very aware, like a guy who could observe a situation and kind of get it, right? And he was just different. He was built different, from the understanding of him was different versus any of those other characters. So I just love him. I think he's a phenomenal just side character in this game. And he was very high up there. He was really, whether you want to say like Tino was like second and he was third, or maybe he was second, the kind of different roles at the the table. He was top 3, in that entire kind of that hierarchy. So I think you could do just anything, just develop the character maybe a little bit more, have him do a couple missions. He could, again, it doesn't even have to involve Enzo, could involve other characters, just to kind of see him again. I think that would be a really cool idea. Okay, now we will get a little bit more specific. So let's talk about Leo at the end of the game. So this is one that I've seen this around. I'm trying to go like almost blind, but I've seen like popular theories or popular things that people kind of want. This one does make sense because when we talk about gaps, this is a noticeable one, right? And it's like, this is a character that we know as he gets older. We know he makes it to Empire Bay. We know that, he talks about it even in this game, The Old Country. And you got some time, right? Because like at the end of the game, you don't have, well, really, I would say actually, just him as a character, he kind of goes away a little bit towards the end of the game. The focus is not on him as much as it was. I would say maybe up to like the 70-80%. Once the mutiny kind of thing happens and like Enzo's sent on the quest to like take everybody out, Leo really gets shoved completely because, he's busy like in the lore, right? Like he's doing things. And then, he's really working behind the scenes to help Enzo and also to help himself because he's getting out of there as well. So towards the very end of the game, there are a lot of these gaps where he's doing things, but they're kind of behind the scenes. And now, granted, this might not make for the best DLC. These are just ideas. Like Luca, again, that's wide open. Like you could have him fight off a gang or do all these kinds of missions, do whatever. For Leo, there might not actually be all that much to tell. I think it would be interesting, maybe, but you never know. So that's why I'm just kind of throwing ideas out there. He has a gap. He has a gap of between like the 80% and like 95% of the, the end of the game. He's got a gap there. And then technically, even when, say, the credits roll on the game, he also has a gap of getting from one place to the next. You know what I mean? So there is something you could do there, and he's a familiar character versus like Luca being more of like a side thing. So maybe that would be more like up their alley, or they'd care to do that more. Just an idea. Okay, number 3. This one is pretty, actually, I would say this. 3 and 4, controversial and kind of for their own reasons, all right? I don't know if I'd actually want this one, but I thought of it on the fly, and I said, okay, I'm going to put it into this video. So Isabella, when she makes it to Empire Bay. Now, the reason I would say I could be for this is just you can kind of do anything, right? Like you have her pregnancy, you have the birth of their kid, you have kind of settling in, and like where does her life go from there, okay? Now, I would say like the setup gives you options to do things, and I mean, considering we're doing spoilers as well, we did play as her, okay? Now, I'm not going to put too much weight on that, but I will say, like, if you're doing DLC, you're reusing assets, you're doing things that you already kind of have built. So you have, like, we've played as her before, okay? And she's capable enough. Now, I'll stop there really and why I'm for it, and then I'll give you some reasons now why I'm kind of against it. But again, these are just ideas. Like, if they do it, they do it. I would maybe not against it for this reason, but I think it would be challenging for them to make it for this reason. You'd have to make Empire Bay. Now, like, okay, you could go back and you could use things you previously have had, but like in the engine and all of the stuff they built, and this took them years to make the old country. They worked very hard on it to build a brand new land, right? Brand new setting, really. I mean, you could argue how brand new it is, but like in their engine. That would be quite the undertaking, right? At least with what I've said so far, you're keeping it in the same area that you've had the base game. And for a DLC, for like a $20, $25, $30 DLC, you're not reinventing the game. You're not making a brand new thing. You're not making a brand new land, So that's something that I'm not opposed to it because of that. I'm saying I think they would actually be opposed to it because of that. Now, the thing I would probably be opposed to, and I've said this in my review, my spoiler cast, all this stuff, I would be just worried of like how much more you'd want to use her because I don't think she's a killer. Technically she did kill 2 people at the end of the game there, but I don't want her going around like slinging guns. I don't want her to be like a knife wielding assassin. That's not who she is. I think you'd be doing a couple character assassinations there because like it wouldn't really make sense. And then also her as a character, I just don't think it really makes sense, right? I think she's capable. She's obviously been in the life, but I don't think she cracks and just all of a sudden is like, oh yeah, I'm cool like doing tasks in the life. And the only thing, I guess the only reason I bring that up is that would be rather hard to translate then into, okay, you're going to play as her for like a 4-hour DLC. It's like, well, what are you going to do as her, right? Like, is she going to drive around, or what would the focus kind of be on? The only thing I can really think is more story related. Okay, how does she settle into a new place, to America? Who does she meet there? The baby, how does that all go? But I mean, like, beyond that, okay, and that's an important story, but then you have to make her do things, and like, what is she actually going to do? That would be the roadblock that I think would stop this idea. And now the fourth idea, controversial in probably a different way, but honestly, this was the last idea I thought of, and I kind of am liking it the more and more I think about it. So go with me on this. I'm thinking something Cesare. Cesare at the end of the game. So we're going to kind of follow the Leo thing. So Cesare really, like, the camera leaves him off in a very specific spot, right? He's at the villa, the volcano erupted, everything's in smoke, and he's really alone. He might not know it yet, but lots of people are dead. So the higher-ups of his family, well, he knows part of the higher-ups are dead, but maybe not all of them, right? So it's like he's just there. He gives the ticket to Isabella. So the reason I really actually think, the more I think about it, this is probably the perfect one to do. Number one, everything's already built, right? You're taking it literally at the end of the game. So, like, even the fire, like the fact that the volcano is still going off, you can pick him up right then and there, have some sort of, like, big, cinematic-y type thing, and then, kind of have, like, the aftermath. And that's really, I guess, where I would go with it with a story perspective, right? The story kind of writes itself, where it's like, okay, it's literally just the aftermath. What does this guy do? He killed Enzo, so he's got that on his mind. He gave his cousin, the tickets to be free. but he's maybe grappling with that in his head. Both of those things he might be struggling with in his mind, right? He lost his uncle. He lost his entire family. He lost his business. He lost his future that he was talking about the entire game. This is a guy that was pretty multi-dimensional. He wasn't just a one-dimensional guy, but what did he always talk about? He was always talking about, like, hey, Enzo, one day I'm going to be in charge, and like I'm going to need you, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be tasked with doing this. Like, this is just how it is. This is a guy that as the game went, he grew up. He grew into that role, and he knew eventually things would change and he would be tasked with like more. He lost all of it at that end of the game. So I like the idea of kind of picking it up right then and there. He's going to be struggling with things mentally. He's struggling with things physically because like everything's on fire and destroyed. He has no future, for that family. What does he do? Now, I like the darkness of the end of the game where you kind of just leave him. That's the ending. You can kind of write it yourself. So I don't know. Really, again, like, do any of these stories need to be told? Not necessarily. But these are just ideas I'm throwing out. I don't necessarily need to know what he does. I think it's kind of fun to just speculate in my own head, the headcanon, right? But if they wanted to make it, I think that makes sense. And again, like, everything's built. Everything's there. It's a character that very much fits that mold. The only thing I guess would be going against it is you're playing as the guy who killed the main character, right? So, and the character you were playing as. So that would just be a thing where it's like, okay, do you want to do that to the audience? Would we be cool with it? I've made all these videos. I've seen a lot of different opinions on it. Not everybody's a fan of that ending. There was a lot of people that thought it was cheap or just wasn't, right, or it wasn't good. It literally wasn't a well-written ending. I disagree with a lot of that, but that's okay. Again, like, the point is, I don't think everybody's on board with the ending, and then how many people would be okay to play as him? And that's a tough one. It really is. You can't just think about me. I mean, it's my video, but in terms of like the larger scale, I think his makes the most sense though. You got like the mental motive, the physical motive. He can do like physical things. Like, you don't have to convince yourself like the Isabella stuff. He can do stuff. He can shoot, he can fight, he can stealth. He would just be like another Enzo in terms of playing as him. So that would be easy. That's simple. The story makes sense. The themes, kind of almost doing this epilogue type thing, like that would work. That is kind of the reason I think he makes the most sense. The other, Luca and Leo is more about filling in gaps, and then Isabella is just, kind of, if you wanted to really take it extreme, I guess you would do that idea. So let me know what you think about my 4. You let me know any ideas, you have in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.